You're in limbo. You're in limbo.
Limbo, slow death, hot dreams, unmet. Trust our personal purpose to serve, so we walk around to regress.
All right. You know what? I really fucked up and we were off for 3 days, so I'm just wrapping my brain around this again. But somehow we have managed to get the almighty Tense Machine Canadian content at its finest. We've got Dane, Brendan, and Mike from Tense Machine. How's it going, fellas?
Hey, hey.
Oh,
Right on.
From
We're
sunny Ontario.
exactly sunny, hot Ontario. We're stoked to have you here. First things first, just love to ask, how did Tense Machine come to be? You guys are, well versed in music from very successful bands previously, but how did Tense Machine come to be? Where did you guys meet up?
Dane, take it
well,
away.
I think what basically we were out as a band called Dead Set Society,
Right.
and I've known Mike for, probably going on 12, 13 years. And Brendan and the singer from Dead Set Society, Reed, were in a band called My Darkest Days. And so we had all split from different bands and ended up meeting for Dead Set Society. And we toured for about 3 years and played some really awesome shows, did a lot of what we set out to do. And then life kind of got in the way and things turned upside down a little bit. And so we took a little bit of a hiatus from Dead Set Society. And during that, I had a few songs that weren't really Dead Set material. And Mike had gotten in touch with me at one point and said, we should try recording them and get them down. And that's basically how it kind of came about. And the only person we could think of that we would want to take out with us was Brendan, so he came to the table as well with some awesome tunes, and that was the birth of Tense Machine.
Awesome.
And here we are, and now you're rocking it, and you got the release of Echoes. The full-length album just came out, hot off the presses. Maybe people buy those, but I know people are streaming it now. And how's the reception been for the release, guys?
It's been really good on our end for sure. It's really amazing to feel, I guess, the support from fans that you've had from different projects.
Mm-hmm.
But it's wicked to see those emails come in from fans that you've had for 10 plus years, and they've followed you through 3, 4, 5 different projects. So that's been amazing.
That's so cool. It's a great album, boys.
We got to test
cheers,
it out
thank
a
you.
little bit too on the road. We went out in January and played a few shows before all this pandemic stuff hit.
That was one of my questions: is how much time did you actually?
Joey, are you there? Test, Joey.
I think he he
Oh.
dropped.
Okay, we might have lost him now, but he was just questioning, I think, as to how long you guys actually got to put some of this material out and play it before all this shit went down with COVID.
We
Not
got a
long enough.
quick tour in for 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
2 weeks, yeah.
Yeah, it was funny because when Dead Set went on hiatus and stopped touring, I kept feeling like, okay, like I'll feel like we're back once we have our USP2 visas, and like I'll feel like we're back once we get across the border and we're at McDonald's and we're like back on tour. And it's just funny how things work out. So we got that first tour under our belt, and we started hearing back in January about the issues that were going on over in Europe and China. And it's just like kind of waiting for it to hit over here. And just seeing how things played out, it's funny that the hand that life will deal you sometimes when you think you've got a plan for something, and then life just kind of chuckles a little bit. And it's like, oh, you think you want to go tour this year?
Yeah.
Well, guess
Yeah.
what? No one's touring at all this year. So,
One, that was definitely a crazy one because during that tour, Brendan had another gig that he had to fly out for and then fly back and meet us. And it was right when the whole COVID thing was starting. And I remember you saying the one day that there was planes that were coming in from where the first cases were,
from
or something like
right
that.
from Wuhan, and they were unscreened
Yeah.
completely
Oh, wow.
in Toronto.
Yeah.
Like we're talking like a month and a half into the pandemic, people that work at the airport were saying like flights are coming in from Asia and Europe and all over the place, completely unscreened, like nothing whatsoever.
That's
So
good.
it's not good.
No, it's unreal to look back at how fast really everything kind of went. It was unreal to me. Like, we're still dealing with it. I just felt like when this first happened, it should have just been like, okay, a month, we'll get through this and go on, carry on with our lives. Nothing's fucking normal now.
No, it's
No, that's
it's
exactly
unbelievable
what I
how long it's been since this started. I was thinking about that the other day. I woke up and I'm like, not to say that I don't like this, because I get up and I'm like, I'm gonna drink some coffee, gonna practice, gonna write some tunes, gonna like work on some stuff. But so it's not all bad, but yeah, I just couldn't believe the other day. I woke up and I'm like, this is like 6 months in. What the?
Well,
like,
what was that? What was the show in London? Was that on March 5th?
or
I remember,
Windsor.
I remember us, we're
Windsor.
walking into Walmart, we're chatting about it, and you said you were wearing gloves at the grocery store and stuff like that, and we were kind of chatting about things, and just how quickly things deteriorated in March.
Yeah, like it was, and even I was out on like a hired gig. Where did we go? We went up to like Gravenhurst or something, and even going to like stopping at the truck stops along the highway, you could see all the signs saying like COVID stuff, don't touch, blah 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 blah. And the guy, I was driving with one of the other musicians too, and he like had gloves, and he's like, "You have gloves? Don't touch anything. Get a mask." And I was like, "Oh, what? Like it was just exactly. It was like from one day to the next."
Yeah, and it's like that now. It seems like here we were so behind. Like out in Saskatchewan, things didn't hit. Our numbers did not get very high. They still aren't very high. So a lot of people honestly don't think much of it here, which is kind of scary and unfortunate because certain things are opening back up too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you guys have done the best out of all the provinces, really.
I mean, I say it looks good, but it's Saskatchewan, right? So everybody's like 19 miles away from one another pretty much.
Yeah, you're already distanced there.
You're already
Yeah.
distanced.
Yeah, and the problem areas were way up north where like there were some communities that struggle. I believe the First Nation communities, plus there was like, unfortunately, some like Mennonites or Hutterites, I don't know the difference between the two of them, went into Alberta and brought the Rona back. So they're isolated up there. It's just chaos. It's super weird.
Yeah.
It's very weird.
And it's like the Huttites are like Mennonites, but they travel and stuff, and they go on planes too, right? Because you see them when you're out west.
Okay,
So,
cool.
Yeah, it's something like that.
Yeah, we have them like all around, but I've been very ignorant towards it all.
Yeah, it's even out, like I go and visit my parents outside of the city. Not saying people are ignorant out there, but it's like they had Peterborough County outside of Toronto. Like they had, even now, like they have so few cases, right? That everyone out there is like, it's not as real to them. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And if there haven't been people that have got affected by it, they're just kind of like, nah, it hasn't happened around here, so why worry?
Yeah, exactly.
I remember being at the our vet's in Peterborough. It's my hometown, and I remember being at the vet there, and they were joking in March about the kids getting an extra week for March break, and I kind of had to butt into the conversation between the vet and the other a woman that was there. I'm just like it's a real thing, and like the older population, because like Peterborough's an older population. I'm like, some of the old folks' homes here, like, be careful, because when it comes through, like if and when it comes through, it's going to be pretty serious, and you won't have time to stop it, because you're always 2 weeks away from as bad as you think it's going to be. And it's like how quickly, again, how things deteriorated, and just the tune of that office as well, because I've had to go back a couple times since March, and it's just like, I remember just laughing about it, and like, it just how quickly it took over. So
and that's the thing about moving forward. I work with like adolescents for like mental health counseling that I work with, and I talk to the kids, what's going on for school this year? And one of them was telling me, here's an option for them. They might have September start date, but they're planning on maybe classes being 3 hours each class and only having 2 classes a day. So that limits them from going from classroom to classroom. Yeah.
Oh,
and a lot of online stuff. They're going to maybe just have the hands-on stuff at school, if that, but they're still thinking about it too. It's wild.
Wow.
It's crazy to have to change that much, I guess, like even infrastructure, like just to do that all, what the teachers were going to have to do.
Yeah. And then not just for them, but like when we get to you guys, like touring and concerts and like meeting people, like, you know, shaking people's hands, like, you know, like having meet and greets, things like that. Like, what does that do to you guys?
It's going to be tough. I will say, like, that's kind of one of my favorite parts of touring is you get to hear firsthand the stories of you know, what a song means to somebody, you know, firsthand, rather than what you think it's going to mean to them. So that part, and you know, social media is awesome for that, because you do get to connect with your fans quite a bit. But the hugs and the handshakes and it's a really cool part of it. Makes it feel a lot closer to home. Makes them feel more like family than you know, just someone listening to your music.
Yeah, those connections are really what makes me want to listen to bands, or if you can like at least connect with them and they reach out. Like, you guys, from what we've seen, have been like doing a lot on social media, whether it be Facebook, Twitter, I'm sure like Instagram, whatever. Like, I've seen a lot from you guys. Who handles that day-to-day stuff for you guys?
I handle
We kind
some
of all
of it.
split it up. Yeah, like Mike definitely is the kind of, I guess, more the guru with that kind of stuff. And B knows a heck of a lot more than I do. So I'm really good at just like, okay, Mike, what do I got to do? What do I need to do? Okay, how do I do that? All right.
Well,
And then I have to go back and make sure that I did it right, which I never do, but I learn it eventually.
No, we've divvied up enough of the stuff between the platforms. But the main thing that we've been focusing on, because we can't tour, because there is no live show, we're kind of treating our live streams as our touring a little bit. So we're trying to be as consistent with that as possible. So Dane came up with Sundays at 6. So he hops on for, you know, half an hour, plays a few songs, chats with everybody. So like, that's been really good. And then Brendan and I have been taking the Wednesdays to kind of just do whatever we want in the evening with that. So I think that's important these days. We even talked about it early on, because like there's just this huge flood of everybody wanting to live stream at the same time once they realize that touring and live shows are out.
Yeah.
And I did tell the guys, I'm like, just wait, like this is going to last 6 weeks, because people they're going to quit, because that's not say that's what that's what not say that's what musicians do, but like a lot of musicians, like they can't, I always refer to it as push-ups. They can't do the push-ups that long because they get bored, or they get distracted, or they feel like it's not worth it. So I was just like, let's just stick to that and make that kind of the main piece of our social media right now, is just do those live streams, be consistent with it. Don't hit everyone over the head with it. Like, you don't need to do it every day. You're going to run out of content if you do that, that's for sure. But as far as like being present, allowing your fans to engage with the content, like the live stream was awesome. So
yeah, like what you said here for content and consistency, like that's how Limbocast came about. Like Joey, when he gets his butt back on here, I think his power is out there in Regina or whatever. But anyways, he's a musician himself, and so he's been connecting and doing that, and it was me and him just wanted to connect, and then we started meeting up and interviewing our local band friends, and then we started connecting with other people and happening, and we're just trying to kind of, like you said, weather the storm, because there's been a lot of our friends and like cohorts who've started podcasts or something and have fizzled out already, that you just got to keep it going. Yeah, man.
It's tough.
It is tough.
No, one of the best pieces of advice I ever got was just show up every day, show up and do some work every day. Like don't, and I always tell the bands this too. I'm like, don't think that you can just work really hard on Saturday or Sunday, or like one evening a week, and think you're going to get where you want to go. It's like, put in an hour every single day. It's better.
Yeah.
Put the time in it, show up every day.
How long did it take for you to kind of gain that knowledge?
To gain that knowledge?
Yeah.
Well, a little bit about me too. Like, I have a background in producing records, and so I've had a lot of exposure to bands.
Yeah, I've seen your fancy website.
Yeah,
It looks good.
Oh, thank you. I really need to update it. But as far as like that advice, it's like the people who make it, that like the artists, not just musicians, but like anyone that's a creative that wins, they just work at it every day. And then the more you work at it every day, the luckier you're going to get, the more you're going to find opportunities, the better your craft is going to get. Even with your podcast, it's like if you run 4 a week, you're way ahead of someone that can only do 1 a week. After like your 1 week equals their 1 month. So as far as learning that, it's like, I learned that probably when I was in my mid-teens, because like all I've ever done is music. Like I've showed up every day to work on music.
Mike's mom told me at Mike's wedding that Mike has always had a plan. So I hypothesized that he came out of the womb with a plan, being like, all right, we're going to make music work here.
Right on.
Well, I will admit I fell into music. So originally when I was going to school, it was for TV and film. I wanted to do like sound effects and sound design, stuff like that. But I just kept falling back into music. But as far as like being in bands and stuff, like, you know, starting at age 14 and 15, it was just like, I remember my grandmother being like, why aren't you playing on New Year's? And I'm like 14. And I'm like, Grandma, I'm 14. And then I just started thinking like, no, I should be in a band. So then like after that, I started meeting more musicians and starting jamming with people and stuff. It's just, I've always kind of got up and worked on music in one way or another. I think we all have, actually.
That hustle was instilled early on, for sure, man. That's great to hear.
It's all you know after a while, too. I think that's with all of us. It's like music's all we know. So,
Yeah, if you play an instrument and your family makes comments like, wow, you sure practice that instrument a lot, or like, hey, can you please stop that and do this for me? That's a good sign, because you're putting the time in. and that's exactly what it is, though. It's just like, if you play an instrument, I thought of this when I was pretty young, again, like 14 or 15. It's like there's an infinite amount of work you could do to master an instrument. Like, you'll never be done, but it's not about getting to that mastery. It's about the journey of getting there, I think, right? And it's like, you just got to keep putting in that time, and like it's just part of it, right?
Yeah, that's a real good way to put it there, as to like, you know, experiencing the journey there. But as musicians, your journey can often, I'm sure, have a lot of highs and lows. We've talked to many of them. How do you guys overcome some of the slumps, the weirdness, the COVIDs?
I if I can jump in, I think the one amazing thing about being not just a musician but songwriters, and I'm sure that Mike and B will definitely agree. One of the coolest things is the fact that you know, dark times and bad times are kind of when you get some of your best inspiration. You may not know it at those times in particular, but you have this, you know, kind of cathartic way of being able to translate negative into positive. And so, and even just in shows, like on tour, being on tour and having a bad day, you've still got, you know, 30 to 90 minutes to jump on stage and get all of that negative out. So I think that's one of my favorite things about being a musician and a songwriter is there's always a way to turn that negative into a positive, turn that COVID into, you know, our next album. And I think that's what we've all kind of been doing is sitting around, coming up with riffs, coming up with song ideas, coming up with what our next thing is going to be.
Yeah, it sounds very much like mindset and just moving forward, like Mike talked about, just showing up.
I want to hop in on that for 1 second, Dane. It's funny because like you talk about like the low points on tour and stuff like that. It's like you can be mad at your band on tour, go on stage, kill it, be happy for a bit, and then go back to being mad at each other. Like every band goes through that kind of stuff. You can be annoyed. But one of the other things too with the highs and lows, I think when you have enough experience in music, and I think we've all been really fortunate where we've had success early on, like in our early 20s, I would say. But when you have those highs and you know what it feels like, you're constantly trying to get back to that. And when you have those lows, you know that they pass. You know that if you just keep trucking through it, it's going to pass. So you kind of bring the highs down and you kind of bring the lows up. And that's why I think with experienced musicians is like they don't get really excited about, like you can still get excited for a bit, but you put it in perspective. And when you see, like, I think when the three of us, when we see like inexperienced bands or inexperienced musicians get really excited about something, we can be happy for them, but we know that like there's so much more. Like just chill out a little bit. There's so much more. It's not to rain on it, but it's just chill out. And when something really crappy is going on, it's like, well, just get through it. It's fine. Just keep looking past that. So you just kind of, you kind of ride the middle a lot.
Keep doing the
Emotionally.
proverbial push-ups,
Yeah.
right?
Well, yeah, it's not a sprint, right? Like it definitely
always a
is a long
marathon.
distance. We're we're throwing every analogy possible at this.
Well, if you're in a boy band, then sprint. Get
Yeah,
paid.
like I gotta-
Yeah.
Well, it's funny
I
that you
gotta-
say that, Dane, that it's not a sprint, because we've talked to a lot of musicians who, many of them have said, you know what? It's been about 15 years and I finally feel like I found my voice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, when you hear that, it puts a lot of things into perspective, because you're like, wow, 15 years and you finally kind of feel like you're starting to scratch it out or figure it out. That's wild.
Well, and I can honestly say for myself, and it's a little bit different just because this, like, I have my voice on this one, and I played guitar mainly on the Dead Set stuff, but Echoes is definitely the first album that I've released, because I've had albums before as a solo artist, and Echoes is the first time that hearing it back, it felt right. It felt there. It felt like me. It felt like me and Brendan and Mike really, came together as a unit in a way that I hadn't we did it with Dead Set as well, but I just mean for myself as a singer, that it's the first time that I've had that feeling. So that was a very cool thing.
Right on.
I had a moment when when we were doing the pre-sale stuff, and I was driving out to Dane's to bring a bunch of CDs out for him to sign. And like, I kind of had a moment, because like, again, I've known Dane like over 10 years now. And like, dare I say, like, Dane went through development hell. I saw him go through that cycle, and thinking like, this is Dane's, in my mind, like, yeah, we had the Dead Set record, but like in my mind, like, this is Dane's first record, and he's made a lot of records. And this is like, to me, the first one that kind of came out. And I don't know how we got on this topic, but highs and lows.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the highs and lows.
Both.
That's good. We're getting deep on here, man. We're digging deep.
No, it's a thing for a lot of musicians, because it's just like, you don't know what life's going to throw at you. So
Yeah.
And
show up.
Yeah, show up, get your voice out there, and speaking of voice, speaking of the album again here, like, we had the opportunity, we reviewed it just shortly after it came out, just because we saw you out and about, and anybody who's connected to FM Music Management, we love to tackle and try and get our grubby little hands on, because they've been nothing but good to us. So it's been awesome. But
Awesome.
Same.
Yeah,
that's
same
good to
here.
hear. But maybe not so much record labels, perhaps. I believe there's a story that's supposed to come about.
I think we were talking. Are you talking about the Dead Set name change?
Potentially, we were talking about how Tense Machines is like Tens Machines, and you'd rather be that than involved in some record labels.
Oh yeah, no, that was on Twitter. Yeah, you made a comment, because if you type in Tense Machine, it'll sometimes correct it to Tense or Tens Machine.
Dr. Ho machines every goddamn where.
Yeah, and long story short with that, we had a different band name, and we signed with FM May 2017, and like the next day we got a cease and desist on the band name.
Oh wow.
Because there's a record label called Never Say Die Records, and they weren't a big fan of the name that we were using, and things were working really well, and we were charting on the radio, and starting to get some decent slots on some tours and festivals and stuff, and they shut it down. And it's like, imagine being on tour, 4 guys in a van on tour, on the radio, charting, and they're like, we need a new name, like, right now.
Yeah.
So part of looking into names for what became Tense Machine, I've told bands too, again, I'm like, if you can't get your .com, you're gonna have problems. So when we were looking for names, whenever I was pitching something to the guys or anyone was pitching, I'm like, just make sure in Google there's nothing in the way. Make sure on Spotify there's nothing in the way, because it's complete idiocy these days to ignore that stuff, because it's like plain as day when you search it on Google, and you're just like, oh, there's already a garden for that, so like, let's not get in it.
Yeah.
For sure. That's the little things that come into play that you guys have learned, I'm guessing, throughout the years that you've been putting in work into becoming bands and diving into social media.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just,
Well,
I've been
unfortunately,
noticing Go ahead, Dan. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say some lessons are more expensive than others.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, like, when I was saying when money fixes the problem, it's not a problem, but it sucked. It sucked a lot having to just kind of solve that problem, just kind of paying for legal fees and the amount of stuff to change. But that being said, if there's any bands listening to this and you have to change your name, it's not that bad. It just sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't that bad.
It can be done.
Yeah, and just the next
Yeah,
day you're
yeah.
like, you have a different name, and okay, and hopefully the fans like it.
Yeah, different name, different image, different branding, whatever, right? You can go many different directions with it.
Yeah,
Well, and speaking of branding, you mentioned Dr. Ho, and those things, man, don't put those in areas they're not expected to be put on. Just, I'll leave it at that.
Well, I'm pretty sure everybody out there can imagine potentially the Gooch or the Gooch area.
Yeah, I'm not gonna elaborate, but
that's another podcast. That's a different podcast.
That's right. We'll keep it slightly PG. There we go. Awesome. But where were you guys supposed to be right now? Would you guys be on tour right now if things were going good? Did you have something lined up right now?
We would have been on tour. We would have been on tour.
Yeah.
It's just- That's one of the things. One of the things that's hard about being a Canadian band that tours a lot in the States is you need to make sure your paperwork's in order
Mm-hmm.
to really do what you need to do. And it's like the things that we were pitching for, the things that we were supposed to be on. Like it's tough because like everything just dissolved in March, April, and everyone was hoping that maybe we'd be back by like originally I thought we'd be back by August, but now we're kind of just looking at some bands that are coming up to Canada in the fall. So, and sorry, the other thing too is like we were supposed to be playing Rock USA.
Oh yeah,
Which
that's
was-
right. That's soon.
Yeah, Slipknot was headlining the day we were on, and Steel Panther and Insane Clown Posse. Like it was just we were pretty stoked about that.
Well,
And,
that's huge names, right? To be
Yeah.
associated with them, that's cool.
yeah.
it's a great festival.
Yeah, and now
Yeah,
you're
put it
just
out.
doing your thing. You're live streaming. You're putting in work, trying to figure out to see what the next step is. And do you guys ever worry that this might potentially be like maybe a lost record for as you guys continue to write and move forward, just how the way the timing came out?
For us, I don't know, regardless of what ends up happening, I think that for us, the album, it needed to come out just for our own sanity to keep playing. But at the same time, we all write so much, and there was a lot of songs that didn't make the album. That's, essentially why the album became 12 songs instead of, I think it was going to be, 9, and then it was going to be 10, then it was 11, and then it was 12. And so there's so much there, and we're always writing. So to be honest, I wouldn't be, happy if it kind of fell under the radar. But at the same time, I think that, it's all what we make it. And Best Mistake definitely is still at radio in the States, and we'll continue to keep things going. But I'm definitely not scared to throw another album out there soon.
Yeah. Worst case, we put another record out early next year, and then we make new fans that don't really know the first record, and they go, "Wow, the first record's really good too."
Right. And that's the benefit of like the way music is now. This is what I talk to Joey about all the time is whereas like if somebody puts an album out and then it just goes forgotten, before you had to actually try and find it in a record store and see who had it, or if it was out of print, you couldn't get your hands on it. Now you just go click and be like, oh yeah, there was their first album. Let's go listen to it.
Yeah.
That's
And,
amazing.
Yeah, you can sit on Spotify and listen to a band's entire collection and Jones out on all the tunes that you never knew before.
I'm glad that we went through this pandemic with a record out as opposed to not having a record out. Put it that way. It does suck if it does suck if the record gets burned by this whole thing, but I would much rather it this way than not having stuff out because everyone's sitting at home, going through Spotify, going through stuff.
Hell yeah.
Things. So I would rather it this way for sure.
Yeah, it seems like it's either or for some people. They think, well, I'd love to be touring because that's how we got our fans. Other times, you guys seem to be like a band who look at things like the glass half full. Whereas like people will find it, they'll hear it, people will dig it up, or people will share it by word of mouth and get out to the people that need to hear it.
Yeah. Well, and I think it goes back to what Mike said earlier, where, you know, going through the tough times, when you've done it a few, it's, you know that it's going to be over. You know that the tough time will end and you'll get back on top, and you'll be back to doing what you love. And, you know, so it's just kind of making it through. Show up, make it through.
Yeah, show up. And speaking of showing up, you guys said you're a Canadian band that does a lot of touring in the States. But as a Canadian band, do you guys find it, you know, hard to make it in Canada alone? Is that something people can do possibly?
Brendan, do you want to chime in with any My Darkest Days stuff?
So I've gone through this like my whole career almost, where every band I've been in is plays, you know, what someone at a record label called it, this Canadian content, and he called us Americon, right? Because we're a Canadian band, but we sound like American radio. I think it's almost like it's a stylistic thing. It's like certain things just do better in Canada, and hard rock is not one of them necessarily. Now and Canada too, it's kind of split too, like what does better where. Like I think out west, like the My Darkest Days, active rock, like that sort of style, it just does better. Whereas in Ontario and like Quebec's weird. Quebec has little, like you go, you know, Papa Roach. There's pockets. Yeah. You'll go to like, you know, French, like the Montreal crowd, they love their hard rock. Same thing. You go to Quebec City, and there are little pockets, right? But it's when you go east, it's like it's just a little different, you know. It's not the same kind of rock. Yeah. It's more like the Trews would do better.
Oh, exactly, right? Like, you know, Sloan, the Trews, Tragically Hip. You know, there's that classic rock that everybody kind of knows, and I guess, you know, pictures Canada as, whereas you have like bands like 3 Day Grace, the Vera Union, Finger 11, when they used to rock pretty hard. Like that was stuff that went down to the States and kind of crossed over, and it was almost a shame because as Canadians we never got to see them tour up here because they were too busy touring the States.
Well, on the tip with touring, it's just like the logistics. Like this is the boring part of this answer, but it's like the logistics of touring Canada versus the States. You can drive 2 or 3 hours in the States, play another market.
Yeah.
When you try to drive 2 or 3 hours in Canada, you're probably in the middle of nowhere still.
Yeah, without a doubt, right?
Yeah. So like when I'm trying to remember my geography, but it's like you basically hit Winnipeg, and then you're probably not even that. You're probably Brandon.
Yep. Yeah, Winnipeg. For sure. You hear that.
And then there's like Regina, and then it's
Saskatoon,
like
maybe.
Saskatoon. Yeah, that's like 4 hours away. You know, like maybe like 3 hours. But if you're again like everything's so staggered, it makes total sense for sure. Like for people out here, but it's frustrating when you want to see a band, but then great, I got to drive 8 hours to Calgary to go check them out.
Yeah, and that's one of the pieces of advice with bands that want to tour Canada. Because I'm like, if you want to set fire to your bank account and the morale of your band, it's like go tour Canada as like a low or medium exposure band, and like we kind of have to wait for a decent headliner to come up to go out with them. Like you need to, like in our position, it's like we need a Buckcherry or a Hailstorm or Breaking Benjamin, like someone that you can hop on with if they've got space on the bill, to go with them, because then people will drive, they will travel in Canada to go watch these shows. But actually, to backtrack, Dana and I were playing in a band called Age of Days, and we brought Reed out for a tour that we were doing with Disturbed once they got going again. And so when you go and do Eastern Canada and you're playing like Moose Jaw, but you're playing the arena, or you're playing, Edmonton, you're playing the arena, it's like, that makes it worthwhile to tour Canada, because you can get enough people in one spot. But it's down the States, like gas is cheap, food's cheap, hotels cheap, drives are short.
Even the highways, like one thing I noticed too, that I forget it sometimes, but when we just went across a couple years ago with Fozzy, we went out west, and it was in the middle of winter too, but it's like when you're driving down the highway, there's just less truck stops, there's less amenities for you. So that alone too just makes Canada like more of a tough go, because like it is like we were going across like I think it was like through Alberta, and I'm like, can I get a good cup or just a cup of coffee? Like anywhere,
even getting out of Ontario. Like Farewell to Fear, another band that we were with on the Fozzy tour. When we played Toronto, and then where we go, Sault Ste. Marie or Sudbury.
Thunder Bay.
Thunder Bay, yeah, we're going north, and I'm like, get up and go, because if the weather turns, like it's not good. You don't want to be driving as much. Like don't drive overnight if you can. Like stop in Barrie or something and then just go. And we were trying to meet up with them. We got kind of hung up in the morning trying to get out of Toronto. And I'm texting them just like, just go. And we end up in like this wicked snowstorm. I talked to Jared James Nichols. I was trying to figure out where they were staying the night before. So if we got caught up somewhere, we know where to meet them. And I remember like Brendan, like you couldn't even see the road. Like I had to beg the guy at the motel to get us rooms because we just showed up and I'm like, please, like, what are we supposed to do? It's a snowstorm. And it's like the band Farewell to Fear. It's like, they're from Florida and they don't get it. They don't understand. And we're just like, I'm not joking. I'm not doing a Canadian bit here. I'm like, go, it's not safe. Like just drive.
Isn't that the one where they ended up spinning around? They got spun around on the highway or something?
Yeah. That was in Alberta. Yeah, there's a couple really bad stretches heading to like especially between Edmonton and Calgary. There's like a turnout there where if there's black ice on it, it's like game over for everybody and everyone feels it when they're driving. So
yeah, for sure. That is the treacherous part. Not just, Alberta, Ontario, Saskatchewan, Canada in general. That weather can turn, as we all well know, within a matter of hours, minutes, whatever. It's wild, man. Do you guys ever miss the Canadian grind every once in a while when you're down touring in the States?
I loved it when we did it the last time. When we went out with Fozzy, that was definitely a blast. And then even on this on our Tense Machine run, like it definitely, I love Canada, so it's nice to see those parts. But I will say the drive I didn't have to do, so I got to relax on the back seat. Mike and B did the driving, but yeah, it's nice to wake up, drive 3 hours, be at sound check, get your stuff all out, be done, get some food, instead of waking up at 4 a.m. to drive
logistics
11 hours.
It's a beautiful country, and it is nice to drive across. It's just when you're me and you're looking at the spreadsheet and all you see is red, you're just like,
yeah.
Because even we finished the Fozzy tour, and it's like, get our P2s and we'll go back through the States. And like, that's how we broke even on the tour. It's like 4 shows in the States made up for like 2 weeks of touring Canada.
Yeah.
That's back with Dead Set. Yeah. But it's like, still, it's if I didn't have to look at the books, I'd be like, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Let's
right.
go.
You still got food to put on the table. That's right. It's not just for fun. Got to make a go out of it too.
Well, you're always thinking like there would be food on the table, but at least we don't have to sell the table in order to pay our bills.
Good point.
But there's always opportunities for touring Canada. Always present themselves, because a lot of the American bands go up and do like their spring kind of warm up tour across. We did it a couple times where Papa Roach and Buck Cherry would come up and we'd start Prince George, BC. We'd play like 10 shows across Canada, and that's to them, they're just like, all right, we're getting, that would be just before their like American tour would start, kind of thing, right? So there's always going to be chances for that kind of stuff to happen, right? And like you said, Mike, too, usually when that happens, that's like you're playing arenas, so then it's great, then it's worth it. So
yeah, for sure. Like you guys said, there's just so many different opportunities and logistics, a lot of things to think about, which is really cool to hear from Canadian aspect of it, because oftentimes I was like, man, lazy ass bastards don't want to come to Regina.
But it's just logistics.
It's fair. That's fair. But for a lot of their other Canadian listeners out there, because that's kind of who digs the show here, is can you tell us a little bit more about like the paperwork involved, how you get touring in the States, how easy or difficult is it for a band that would like to go down there and tour?
It's the first round of paperwork's intimidating because there's a lot of pages telling you what to do, but really it's like 3 pages. There's 10 pages to tell you what to do. There's 3 pages you actually kind of need to submit. I think like it's a line in the sand for bands, and I say do it. I say, reach out to somebody, like even reach out to someone like myself and go, if you have any questions about how to do that. Also the AFM and CFM, the American Federation of Musicians, Canadian Federation of Musicians, they're there to help you. And there's a agreement between Canada and the US to allow musicians and creatives to go back and forth under the understanding that they're just there to tour. They're not taking any jobs. They're just there to tour or play or whatever they're supposed to do. So they're there to help you. And it's like, it's cost of business, pay the admissions, like get the paperwork done, make sure it's right. Don't just sneak over and try to play, because if you get caught, it's really bad news for the venues. It's bad news for the artists. It's a line in the sand. And if you want to do it, just get it done. Like we're 2 hours away from Buffalo, and we're like 4 hours away from Detroit, I think.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's right there. But as far as like Canadian bands, it's like when they try to go across Canada, it's like, go like get your P2 and at least like go to North Dakota and then go up into Canada.
And
then
back in the day with MDD, like we toured, we did like the opening gigs in Canada. We just did this. We beat it to death for years and years and years. And we're like, man, we really need to start getting more going on. And then we got signed, and they put us on the road in the US, and it was like, we got our visas. It all happened really fast, and we crossed the border and start going down. And it was, I remember I was like, 23 or something. And I was like, my mind was blown about how much different it was and how much more it was, how much it was closer together and everything, and how like the visas, like, yeah, it's a bit of money, but like it wasn't really that big of a deal. Like once we got it done, I was like, oh my God, why weren't we doing this years ago? Like what the hell were we thinking? Like we should be, and you go back and you look at, like, you know, a great example is Rush. Rush, back in the day, they went to Wisconsin and Illinois and all over the area, and they got on college radio stations. And that's really what helped break Rush initially, was just going across the border. Not even that far.
You got to find your market.
Yeah.
You got to find your market.
Yeah.
That's another issue with a lot of bands in Canada. Like Brandon was talking about earlier, it's like with rock bands in Canada, the culture's not here as much as it is down in the States. We know the pockets that we do really well in. We know there are pockets that we're probably not going to do that great in. And it's like, it's really tough in Canada when the cities are so spread, but also, you know, that if you go to Kingston or something, like there might not be a huge hard rock community there. So it's just, you kind of like, the internet's good because it can help you find, like, you can look on Spotify and look at your analytics there and figure out where people are actually listening to your music. But it's like, if you want to go and play, like, it's way more fun to drive 8 hours to play to a few hundred people than to drive like an hour and just play to friends and family again, or just like play to 7 people. You still want to give those 7 people an awesome show, but again, I'm the guy that's always looking at the spreadsheets. You're just like, let's make the trip and go make this worthwhile here. So
yeah. And whereabouts would you say some of those bigger pockets are for you? Maybe down in the States. Like, I'm just curious as where you guys have done some really solid shows and where you enjoy going to.
Midwest. The rock lives in the Midwest for sure.
Yeah.
Central Illinois, Wisconsin, like down in Ohio. Like there's a lot of areas, but those are some of the areas that we've done really well.
There's a lot of stops, and even those 3 states.
Yeah, it is. There's tons.
Like you can do.
Well, and it's crazy out in Colorado. They definitely have a lot of rock fans out that way.
We were just down in Arizona a couple years ago with Adelita's Way. Those were good shows.
Cool. For sure. Well, that's good to hear that you guys have those like niche areas where people still enjoy rock. And I think that's interesting for, you know, the fans up here to understand that there's still some really good Canadian content that you're going to hear down in the States on that active rock radio, but sometimes we just got to search it out. And I think FM management has done a really good job at bringing some of those bands out too. Like, could you tell me how you guys got connected with them and what they've meant for you guys?
When Dead Set got on the road, I'd already put together, but Brennan's gonna razz me for always having a plan. I already had a lot of managers and labels already drafted in my email. I went through and I figured out who I wanted to talk to, who other assistants were. So all those drafts are already sitting in my email. When Like a Nightmare, Death Sets Like a Nightmare started getting played on Octane and started charting on Biggins, I went through the entire Biggins chart and grabbed all the bands, all their management, all their labels, any contacts I could find, and Through Fire was on there, a song called Breathe that was doing really well. And I reached out to FM, heard back from Frank really quickly and got on a call the next day. And it was Frank, Bob, and Dino from FM. I'm sitting in a van early in the morning. We're in the middle of the desert. We have a black tour van at that point. The van's like 10,000 degrees because
No air conditioning.
because the motel we're at has no lobby. So I'm like, I have nowhere to go, and like the door faces outside, and I'm sitting in the van, and I got on a call with them, and they're just like, where did you guys come from? Because you just showed up on the chart and no one knows anything about you guys. Because we'd only been on tour for it says it's only for 2 months at that point, but it's like there was no history of us. It's like we just Dead Set just showed up and was on the radio. And so that's kind of how we met. And then Bob from FM came and saw us in Illinois. And he was there, saw the show. He was really excited about it, and he stayed until like the very end when we were leaving.
I was gonna say, I remember looking in the crowd, and there's this big tall guy with glasses that like didn't look like didn't dress like he's a rocker, but just rocking out the whole time, loving it, right? And that's kind of the first night we met.
Yeah,
Bob.
and I remember like when we were leaving, I'm just like, Bob stayed until the end, and he wasn't staying, and he wasn't like kissing ass and trying to like get a deal going or something. Like, he was there as a music fan. He was excited, and I'm like, we're seeing someone that's in their 50s that's really excited about music still. And there's a lot of people that like I've met my fair share of people that are in music that work in music because it's a job. They could be selling vacuums, they could be selling music. It doesn't matter. It's just like they have a job. They're not music lovers, and you see them drop out and start doing other things in music. But when we met the team of FM, it's like they're music fans. Like the core of their music fans. And it's like, it was just, I just remember that. I remember like Bob waving goodbye to us and just being like, either this is really weird that this guy stuck around to the end, or he's like legit excited and he's going to tell everyone in the office tomorrow, like, we need to figure out a deal with these guys.
That's awesome. And the rest is history, man. It's great. I love that you're with them, and you guys are killing it. Again, Echoes, it's out now. Tense Machine. I don't want to kick you guys off here, but my connection's lagging here. We got some bad storm brewing, guys. And just before we let you guys leave, can you tell us how we can support you, where we can check you out, and where we can get you some of our hard-earned money?
Dane, you still there?
Hello?
Dane, still there?
Hello? Oh, sorry, guys. My connection cut out for a minute.
Yeah, hey, Dane, we're just the last but not least is just where can we go to track Tense Machine down? How can we support you guys? How can we hear you and give you some hard-earned money?
Well, you can find us on any platform. Spotify, Apple Music, Google, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, just tensemachine.com. And that'll link you to I guess our like online shop and whatnot. So you can get the CD there. We've got some shirts and whatnot up. But yeah, definitely like us on Facebook. Come find us on Twitter, Instagram. Be our friend.
Yeah, right on. We'll be your friend. We'll spread the
Add us
word.
to your Spotify playlist.
Yes.
Yeah.
Much appreciated.
Hell yeah. Awesome. Appreciate your time, guys. Love the music.
Thank you.
We love hearing Canadian rock like that. Probably my favorite song on the album is either Best Mistake or Dead Inside. I dig it.
Nice.
Good picks.
Oh,
Good
very
picks.
dope.
Solid. Guys, well, hopefully we can have you on again down the road when things are a little nicer out and we got the whole team here, because Joe, he texted me the power is out in Regina.
Oh,
Oh, no.
Well, we'll get him. We'll reach him next time, right?
sounds good.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Awesome,
Well, thank
guys.
you
All
so
the
much
best.
for having us on.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. It's super fun. Anytime we can have Canadian content as opposed to just any random bunch of yahoos, we love it. We love it. Tense Machine, cool. We're going to hear more from you down the road for sure. Wish you all the best in the future. And again, thanks for stopping in, guys. Love it.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for having us.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, man. Take care.
Peace.